Mr. President, the national security of the United States is at stake, and the junior senator from Kentucky is complaining that he's not been able to offer amendments. Let me take a moment to set the record straight. As all of us and the senator from Kentucky are well aware, I worked long and hard and in good faith to get an agreement to consider amendments. In fact, I offered him a solution that's more than fair. I proposed a consent agreement that would have brought before the Senate 6 amendments, more than half of which, specifically 4, were written by the senator from Kentucky. Unfortunately, in order to continue his political grandstanding, he rejected that offer. It's unfortunate because the inability to reach an agreement has serious consequences. At midnight tomorrow, the Patriot Act will expire. Unless the senator from Kentucky stops standing in the way, our law enforcement will no longer be able to use some of the most critical tools they need to counter terrorists and combat terrorism. If they cannot use these tools that identify and track terrorist suspects, it could have dire consequences for our national security. When the clock strikes midnight tomorrow, we would be giving terrorists the opportunity to plot attacks against our country undetected. In the last several years, the government has stopped dozens of would-be terrorists before they could strike. Now the senator from Kentucky is threatening to take away the best tools we have for stopping them. Does this mean the Patriot Act is perfect? Of course not, Mr. President. But today, the Republican leader and I received a letter from James Clapper, a 3-star retired general from the United States military, the nation's director of national intelligence. He knows better than any of us the real effects of letting terrorist fighting tools expire. In his letter, he wrote about our ability to conduct surveillance on foreign radicals, to track purchases of bomb-making materials and other classified programs. All of these would expire with the Patriot Act if we let it expire. This is particularly a bad time to shut down electronic surveillance programs. As has been widely reported in the press, we recovered thousands of documents, photos, videos, and other material from Osama bin Laden's compound. This material has opened dozens of investigations and leads to new terrorist suspects and terrorist activities directed toward the United States of America. It continues to yield more and more information every day. If the senator from Kentucky refuses to relent, the government will be unable to fully pursue these leads. That would increase the risk of a retaliatory terrorist strike against the homeland and hamper our ability to deal a truly fatal blow to al-Qaeda. I repeat, Director Clapper, a retired 3-star general, asked us not to allow a moment's interruption in the intelligence community's ability to protect the American people. Some may be asking why. Then, why is the senator from Kentucky holding out? What's keeping him from accepting an agreement to move forward? One that, as I explained, I think is more than fair to him and the Senate. A couple of strong Democratic amendments and his amendments, 4 of them in number. The reason is that he's fighting for an amendment to protect the right, not of average citizens, but of terrorists to cover up their gun purchases. It's all dealing with a gun amendment, Mr. President. We all remember the tragic Fort Hood shuttings less than 2 years ago. A radicalized American terrorist bought guns from a Texas gun store and used them to kill 13 innocent soldiers and civilians. It's hard to imagine why the senator from Kentucky would want to hold up the Patriot Act for a misguided amendment that would make America less safe. The senator from Kentucky also complains that the Senate has not had a week of debate. We all would like to have more debate on this issue. The presiding officer would. We'd like to have a lot of debate on other things, Mr. President. The presiding officer is one of the senators that led an effort earlier in this session to make sure that we'd have more robust debate. We made a little progress, but not enough. But the senator from Kentucky complaining that we haven't had a week of debate better come up with something a little better than that. Here's why. This matter has been before the Senate for 1 week now. I moved to proceed to the Patriot Act last Thursday. Today is Wednesday. As of today, the Senate has been working toward passing this measure for 6 or 7 days. There's no question that the senators have had the opportunity to debate it. The only question has been how senators have chosen to use these last days. The bottom line is that no matter how long it takes to get there, we're going to have this vote, and the vote will win. We will pass the Patriot Act and do everything we can to keep the American people safe. It's up to the senator from Kentucky whether those national security programs will expire before we get a chance to vote. That expiration date is extremely important. And if he thinks that's going to be a badge of courage on his side to have held this up for a few hours, he's made a mistake. It will set this program back significantly, and that's too bad. The clock is ticking. The ball is in his court.
Either you're with us, either you love freedom and with nations which embrace freedom, or you're with the enemy. There's no in between. You're either with us or you're with the enemy. That's clear. I will continue to make that clear.
I rise in response to a scurrilous accusation. I've been accused of wanting to allow terrorists to have weapons to attack America. To be attacked of such a belief when I'm here to discuss and debate the constitutionality of the Patriot Act is offensive. I find it personally insulting. And I think it demeans the body. It demeans the Senate body and the people that we can't have an intelligent debate over the constitutionality of this. I am somehow to be told that because I believe a judge should sign a warrant that I'm in favor of terrorists having weapons. The absurdity of it, the insult of it. If one argues that judges should sign warrants before they go into the house of an alleged murderer, are you in favor of murder? Can we not have a debate on a higher plane? A debate over whether or not there should be some constitutional protections, some constitutional procedure? But to come to the floor and accuse me of being in favor of giving weapons to terrorists? The question is can our Constitution withstand? Is our Constitution strong enough that we could actually capture terrorism, capture terrorists, and protect our liberties at the same time? Should we have some rules that say before they come into your house, before they go into your banking records, that a judge should be asked for permission, that should be judicial review? Do we want a lawless land? Do we want a land that is so much without restraint, a government without restraint, that at any point in time they can come into your house? We were very worried about that. That's why our country was founded on principles such as the Fourth Amendment to protect us from an overzealous government. But to transform an argument where good people might disagree into an accusation that I would let terrorists have weapons, no. I believe that we would stop terrorism, but do it in a constitutional fashion where you would have a warrant issued by a judge. Some people say we don't have enough time to do that. At 3 in the morning, judges are routinely called when someone is accused of rape, when someone is accused of murder. When there is an alleged crime, we get warrants, and it works, and it's worked for 225 years until we decided to throw out the Constitution. We threw out the Constitution with the Patriot Act because we changed the Constitution, not by 2/3 in this body voting for it, and not by 3/4 of the state, but by a scared 51% who threw out their liberties. They said, make me safe. I want to be safe. I'm afraid, make me safe. But they gave up their liberties. I think it was a mistake. And I think we should have an intelligent and rational discussion over this, but I don't think it furthers the debate to accuse someone who has constitutional concerns about the way we are doing things, to accuse them of being in favor of putting weapons into the hands of terrorists. I object strongly to this. The leader has said that they will compromise. They said 1 week of debate in February and open amendments. They would be open to amendments, even amendments they disagreed with. Do whatever people feel is appropriate on this bill. This doesn't mean just amendments that are not emotional or just amendments that have nothing to do with guns. They are petrified to vote on issues of guns because they know that a lot of people in America favor the Second Amendment, own guns, and want to protect it in the right to own guns and the right to have those records not sifted through by the government. We don't want a government that eventually will allow for direction of the police towards those who own guns. We don't want our records to be public. We don't want our records to be sifted through by a government without judicial review. They don't want to vote on this because they know the American people agree with us, and if you polled this question, you'd find 80 to 90% of Americans don't want their banking records, don't want their gun records to be sifted through by a government without a judge ever giving any approval of this. This is a constitutional question, and I would ask the leader to stand by his agreement to an open amendment process. And so at this time, I will ask unanimous consent that my amendments number 363, 365, and 368 be in order, and within 1 hour of debate on each be followed by a roll call vote. And I ask unanimous consent that this occur at this time.
Madam President, reserving the right to object, and of course, as the Senator knows, I've given a statement here on the floor that one amendment, which I understand is in his consent, makes this whole arrangement impossible. I therefore object.
Objection is heard.
It's not about justice. It's not about agenda. It's not about mobilizing people. It's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.
If the government is in the business of forcefully taking money from some people in order to provide welfare benefits to others, how will the people whose money is being taken feel about the government?
Well, I don't accept your phraseology. I don't think we force people.
Taxation is not forceful?
Well, no.
It's voluntary?
In fact, quite to the contrary. Our system of government is a voluntary tax system.